In this video, we are going to see how can we automate the boring tasks that we need to do every single day, and you don't need to know any type of code. We're going to use only macros in Excel, and it's very, very simple to use. I've separated the automation in 4 different steps, as we can notice throughout those 4 different buttons. So let me click in the first one, cleanup, 1, 2, 3. Now let's click on the title, 1, 2, 3. Let me click on the tables, and then let me click in the last one, the charts. And here we have our final result to automate repetitive tasks. And again, you don't need to know any type of code because we are not going to use VBA, but we are going to use only macros. So let's go. Let's get started first, enabling the developer tab. Because here we need to use 2 different tools that are the macros and also record macro. So let me click here in the home tab, and in any blank spot, I can right click and then go to customize the ribbon. Instead of using popular commands, I want to use all tabs. And here we have developer, and then click add, and then click OK. Simple as that. This is how we can have the developer tab activate for us. Now that we already did the first step, let's move on to the second one, that is to understand what we have as the data set. You don't need to use the same data set that I'm using. You can use your own data. However, if you want to download this Excel file for free, just click in the link in the description down below. That way you can follow with me using this same data set right here. So let's say I need to make some changes in this data set. And this is what is going to be my first automation. Let's say I need to clean up the data set and also change some formats. Let's say, take here the total sold. The total sold is a currency, so I need to format the number as currency. The margin is a percentage, so I also need to format this decimal number into a percentage. Another thing that is not properly correct, let's say, is the date. What date is this number right here? I don't even know, so I need to transform this number into a date. Let's say January 1st of 2025 or another date, whatever. So I need to properly format all this data set, and I also need to change the width of the columns. Let's say right now the columns are too small and too tiny, and I can't even see everything that I have within the column. So I need to click, hold, and drag to properly make the column larger, and that way you can see the content within the column. But anyway, let's automate this task. So let me go here to the developer tab, and this is going to be the first automation. Let's click in record macro, and within this new pop-up, I can give my macro a name such as step 1, for example, or something simple. Let's say clean up data set. But the problem with the name is I cannot separate the name using a space because Excel is not going to allow me to do it. Okay, I'm going to have an error. So instead of using space, maybe I can use a underscore or a hyphen or something like this. So clean up data set. This is the first step. If you want, you can also use a shortcut key, but it's not the case right here. And if you also want to, you can use a create a description to make it easier to you remember later on. But anyway, you can input anything right here. Let me click OK. Now everything that you do is going to be saved within your macro. If you change the format, the color, the highlight, the format, the text, the font, everything that you do here in the spreadsheet is going to be saved and stored within the macro. And this is how the automation is created. The first thing that I maybe can start with is change the formats. So let's say the date is a date. So we can click on the letter B to select the entire column and go to the home tab. Here in general, I can click and change to short date. Okay, now it's much better. Day, month, year, maybe here the column F, where I have system ID. I don't want to use this column, so I can get rid of this column. So let me right click in this column and go to delete. Okay, branches, shelf location, and later on we can adjust the width of those columns, okay? Let's go here to the column K and use a currency format, let's say dollars. As the margin, I also want to change the number format into a percentage one, and I want to use 2 decimal places, 1, 2. Okay. Maybe here the column N, IP, I don't want to use, so right click and get rid of this column. device used, region, customer. This customer ID right here, I also want to get rid of. Okay, now I'm done with the format. However, I need to change the width of the columns. So to make it easier and faster than manually and individually select column by column, I can click on the letter A, click, hold, and drag to the right, like this. And in between one column and another, I can double click, 1, 2. Now all the columns are with the same, the appropriate width, let's say. Okay, and I'm done. So this is how we can clean up the data set. Let me finish this macro, click on the cell A1, the first cell. And then I can go again to the developer, stop recording. And now if you go to macros, you can see your first macro. But let's create the second one, and then the third one, and the fourth one. And then you can we can test if everything is working. Now let's move on to the second macro that we can do. But I think before we do the second macro, maybe we can insert a button that corresponds to the first one. So insert and then shapes. And let's use here a rectangle. But you can use another shape. It doesn't matter. Click, hold, and drag to place to create the area of the rectangle. Now let me double click 1, 2 within the rectangle. And this one is going to be clean up. Okay, let's stick with this simple name right here. Let me select this text. I want to vertically align and horizontally align the text, and also increase the font size, put everything in bold. I can also change the design of this shape, going to shape format. Maybe this first one can be a greenish one. Okay, I'm gonna need to have more buttons, but before we do those buttons, we can create the second automation. And the second automation can be to create the header of my report that I can do to the side here of the expression. Something like this, select a couple of different cells, merge everything together, and so forth. So let me record this macro to create the header. Developer, and then record macro. And here I want to have header or title, doesn't matter. Let's click OK. And what I'm going to do here is I need to move to the right. I want to select a couple of cells. Maybe it can be like this. Okay, I think it's good. And I want to merge those cells together. I also want to align vertically and horizontally the text, put everything in bold, increase the font size to 16, change the font color to white, and the background to a dark blue. Maybe this one right here. Yeah, okay. And the header is going to be something like sales report, or let's click again, or summary sales report of 2025, and then let's say JOPA Excel. It's just an example, right? You can use a different text, a different font, a different color. Let me hit enter. Okay, so this is my header. And then I can click developer and stop recording. Now let's create the second button to be store the second macro. And I can click in this one right here, Ctrl+C to copy, Ctrl+V to paste. Let me place this one underneath the previous one. And this one is going to be responsible to create the title. And I also want to change the color to maybe a blue one. Yeah, I think it's good. Now let's move on to the third automation, that is create some analysis into our report. And to create this analysis, we can start with, let's say, of course, there's many different possibilities to create analysis. But the thing that I want to do is I want to see what is the total sold per month. And I also want to have the margin per month. So we can start with this analysis, and then we can move on to a different one that can be, let's say, what is the device that is used the most, and how many times each one of those devices were used, let's say. So yeah, I can stick with those two analyses. And something very important right here. As we can notice, I have many different devices: cell phone, desktop, laptop, iPad, and maybe it's going to be, those values are going to be repeated. So 1, 2, 3, 4 different items in this column. But how can I extract just the unique values? In Excel, we have a formula that is =unique. However, it's not all Excel versions that have this formula. And if I select the column that I want to extract the range and press enter, I can have all the values without a repetition, and it's correct. This is what I need. However, let's say you do not have this function. What you can do is you can click and select this entire column, and then you can press Ctrl+C to copy everything, and then you can go here to a new column and then Ctrl+V to paste, and now you need to get rid of the repetitive values. So you can go here to data, here to the right you can go to remove duplicates, and then you can click OK, continue with the current selection, remove, OK, OK, and yeah, that's it. Now we have unique values, and I can take those values, click, hold, and drag, and move where I need to place those values, okay? So this methodology is what we're going to do in the automation. I could use the unique formula, but as I said before, not everyone has this formula in Excel, right? But anyway, let's go to the third automation, developer, and then record macro. This macro right here is going to be, let's say, to create some analysis, but I can use something simple, such as tables, and then OK. Let's go now to the right, and I want to click on this cell right here to get started with the tables. And here I can have month, and then the total sold, and also the average margin, enter. Let's just make sure we click in this cell here underneath the header, just to make sure the macro saved this coordinate right here. So click, and let's start with the months. So January, enter, and then I need to use from January up to December. However, I don't want to manually input those months. So what I can do is, at the bottom right corner of the cell, click, hold, and drag down, because that way Excel can create this sequence for me, January to December. Now, how can we calculate the total sold? Excel has many different functions, such as the sum function. However, the sum function is going to adapt the values that we selected. If you want to adapt values using a certain criteria, such as January, February, March, and so forth, we need to use SUMIF to have a certain criteria. Double click, 1, 2, and the range that I want to use is going to be the range where I have the months, or in this case, the column D. Okay, now let's go back here, comma, my first criteria is going to be January, comma, and the sum range is going to be the total sold. Simple as that. Let me hit enter, and this is the result. Let me go back to the previous cell. At the bottom right corner, click, hold, and drag down. And because everything is already selected, we can go to the Home tab and change the format to a currency one. Now let's move on to the average margin. Equal sign, and following the same logic as the sum function and SUMIF, the average has something very similar. Average if, here we go, 1, 2, okay. The range is the range where I have the conditions, or the column D, the months, comma. The criteria is going to be, first of all, January, comma, and the average range is the range where I need to use as the average, that I want to use as the average, so the column L, and then enter. Let me click, hold, and drag down to also have the results to all the rows, and change the format to a percentage, and also increase the decimal place to 2 places, like this. Now that we already done with the first table, we can make some adjustments, such as increase the width of those columns. And I want to make sure those columns have, let's say, the same width. So I can select all those 3 columns in between one and another, click, hold, and drag to the right. Okay. I can also select everything and go to the Home tab, centralize here, or align, middle align, and also center everything. I can select the headers, change the format to a bluish one, change the font color to white, and put everything in bold. Maybe the months I can align to the left, and I think it's okay. Now with the total sold, maybe we can apply a different format with the help of the conditional formatting to highlight the largest value with a greenish color and the smallest one with a reddish color. So we can use here color scales. And to the margin, maybe we can do something similar, conditional formatting, but let's use icon sets. Maybe this one, directional. Okay, here we have our first table. And to create the second one, as I said before, I want to know what is the device that was used the most. But we could also do something different, such as using the payment method, use the most, the region that sold the most, and so forth. But let me stick with the device. So let me click in the column N, as I did show before, Ctrl C to copy. Go to the right, paste in any blank column, and then Ctrl V to paste. But we need to get rid of the duplicate values. So let me go to Data and remove duplicates. Let's click OK, and OK again. Here we go. Let me select those values, click, hold, and drag to the side of the previous table. And this one right here, I want to count how many times the cell phone, the desktop, and so forth appears in the list. So equal sign, count if. We can use the same logic as before. Sum if, average if, count if. Let me double click here, to select. And the range that I want to use is the range that I need to count the values. So column N, device used. Comma, the criteria is going to be the first device. And then enter. Let me click, hold, and drag down to see what is the result. Okay, very close one to another. But anyway, this is another methodology that we can use. Let me select both of those columns, click, hold, and drag down. Drag to the right to increase the width. Maybe we can select everything. Align here vertically and horizontally. Change the header to a bluish color and the font to white. Use a bold text, and also select here the values, and also apply a conditional formatting to those values. Okay, so we're done with the third step, that is creating the tables. And of course, you could also select the first table, put some borders, and do the same to the second one. And we're done. So let's finish this step by, let's say, click here in any blank cell. And then we're done. So let's go to the developer and stop recording. Yeah, and it's very important to also create a button to be corresponding to assign the third macro. So let's click in the previous one, Ctrl C to copy, Ctrl V to paste. Let's move it down like this. And this second one is going to be the tables or the analysis. Shape format, and let's use a yellowish one, or maybe I think, yeah, a yellowish one is okay. And now let's already create the fourth one. Ctrl C, Ctrl V, copy and paste. And the last one is going to be the charts that we are going to use. And this one can be orange. Okay, but now it's time to get done and create the last automation, the charts. So developer, and again, record macro. And this macro is going to be the charts. Let's click OK. And what are the charts that we can create? The charts, anyway, is going to be based on the tables that we have. We can create many different charts, or we can create just one single chart or so forth. But let me select, first of all, the month and the total sold, both of those columns. I want to use a column chart to help me visualize this data set. Insert, and then let's use a column chart. Something that we need to be mindful with the macro, because we don't want to use a VBA, we don't want to change the code, we just want to make it simple. We cannot move the chart because macro is not that, let's say, is smart within know the name of the chart and then to use the name to move the chart, because let's say this chart right here is going to be called chart 1 automatically by Excel. So if I move this chart, the macro is going to record something like this, that I moved the chart 1 to the right or to the left and so forth. So if I have a different chart later on, I use the same automation, the chart is going to has a different name. So it's going to be an error in the automation. So do not move the chart. Let the chart here in the screen. But what we can do is we can change the format of the chart, of course. So let's go to the chart format and let's select a different one. I want to stick with the second option. I think it's very, very interesting. Now let's select here the device used and the count of the devices. And for this data, I want to use a Dana chart. Click and OK. But let's say I also want to apply some data to this chart, maybe some percentage and so forth. So I can go to chart design and select a different style right here. Let's see what is the best. Maybe this is style 8. Yeah, I think it's okay. And yeah, I'm done. So let me click in any cell, and then I can stop the recording and be done. However, there is a couple of steps that we also need to finish, such as we need to assign each one of those steps into our buttons. And we also need to know how can I properly save my Excel file to do not lose the macro, the automations that we did. So let's get started. Assign each one of the macros to the buttons. Let's go to the first one, right click, and then I can go to assign macro. The first is going to be clean up dataset. Okay, let's go now to the title, right click, assign macro, and then header, tables, right click, assign macro, tables, charts, assign macro, charts. Okay, now as we can notice, if I hover over the buttons, the cursor is going to be like a thumb trying to click on the buttons. And this is what we need, okay? So this is already working. But before we test to see if everything is working perfectly, let's see how can we properly save this Excel file. So let's go here to File and then Save As. Click here, Browse. You can save this Excel file anywhere in your computer. However, it's very important to click Save As Type and change to Excel Macro Enable Workbook. Okay, so this is the most important thing, XLSM. And then click Save. That's it, simple as that. Now let's check if this automation is working. And a very important step that I just forgot to show here is, if we change the width of the chunks, the buttons are also going to change the area. However, I don't want to make it happen. So what I can do is, I can select the first button, right click the first button, right? And then you can press and hold the Control key and select all the buttons that you have. Now you can right click in the buttons and go to Format Object. Here to the right, you can go to the last option, Size and Properties, and then don't move or size with cells, and then close, and that's it. If you move now the chunks, the width, the buttons are going to stay in the same place always, and this is what I need. So let's check if it's correct. Let's say now it's another day and I receive a new Excel file. You can maintain this file right here as your main file, okay? The main automation, all the automations that you need to do, you do right here. So you have this new Excel file, let's say. Let's get rid of these automations that we did before, those calculus, and also let's get rid of this data set, delete, okay? Now let's go here to a new data, select everything, copy. Let's say this is a new file that I have, go to my main spreadsheet, and then select the first chunk, Control V, copy and paste, simple as that. Now let's check if the macro is going to help us with the automations, with the steps. So let me click here in Clean Up. 1, 2, 3, click. Yeah, okay. As we can notice, everything is okay. Now let's click here in the title and see if it's going to work. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, the header is right here. Now let's click on Tables. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, the tables is right here with the calculations. Everything is working. Now let's go back here and click on the charts. 3, 2, 1, go. Yeah, those charts are here. The only thing that we need to do is click, hold, and drag and move the chart where we need. So this is how we can automate tasks in Excel. And I hope you guys enjoyed this video. And if you have any questions or any suggestions to the next videos, maybe how to use macros with VBA to create, let's say, more complex things, such as move the chart around or another things, you know, tell me what you need to do. And I really hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I see you in the next one.